about Hillary. He didn't answer it. He's never answered why he gave Hillary Clinton $4,600 for her presidential run, or why he gave her $3,200 the previous election cycle. And he answered the Schumer question. He gave Chuck Schumer $1,000 a year ago, but the answer doesn't fit the facts. When he answered your question, he said it was because Schumer brought low-cost airline to upstate New York. But that doesn't fit with the facts because the upstate airline thing was over by 2004. And in 2009, he gave him $1,000, 5 days, and he said he lost respect for Schumer over Obamacare, but 5 days before he gave Schumer $1,000, Schumer came out with his plan for the public option, which didn't even make the final legislation. So Schumer was actually more radical than the thing that Palladino's complaining about, and he gave him $1,000 when that was going on. So, to answer your first question, I don't think he answered. That's the big question: is how can you say you're a conservative Republican when you're giving money to Al Gore and John Kerry and Hillary Clinton and Chuck Schumer? And he's never really answered that question. He's never come out and faced that question straight up. And that plays into what happens in the governor's office. You need somebody who's going to give you straight answers. You need somebody who's going to answer you honestly. You need somebody who's not going to be hiding something. And that's why I'm different.
Now, on your info page and things like that, you list your political allegiance with the Libertarian Party. Could you explain to our listeners a little bit about the Libertarian philosophy?
Sure. Libertarian Party, I like to joke, it's like vegetarians, but we eat liberty. The short story, though, is small government. We believe in small government. You remember the Republican Party used to believe in small government, and then we got in power. And once the Republican, when Pataki got in power, he doubled the size of the New York State government. So we say we believe in Republicans, and I'm a registered Republican. And I was the Republican congressional candidate in 2004 and 2006 in Johnstown and Gloversville, as well as, the Albany area. So, I am a Republican. I'm a Republican who believes in small government. I'm running as a Libertarian candidate because the Libertarian Party asked me to be their candidate, and they're actually a party of principles. They actually stand for something, small government, that very few Republicans, once they get elected, live up to. Chris Christie in New Jersey is an example of somebody who is living up to it. So small government, you get some extreme libertarians. My joke about the extreme side of libertarians is government should be about defending the borders and pass the mail, and we're really not all that sure about the mail. But at a practical level, it means let's cut spending. We've got to figure out where, because we know there's a lot of waste in government. So let's really attack the waste, and not just talk about waste, but let's identify agencies that we don't need. A good example is the Commission of Corrections. It's $3 million a year. They sit around and talk about prisons. And that's it. That's all they do.
Well, it seems like you're right, there's plenty of room to certainly make improvements in the government and cut it back. How about the war on drugs, things like that? Where do we stand on that? Do you see that as a state viable expense? Are we winning that, or do we have to change a direction in that?
Well, we're very clearly not winning that. The war on drugs has been a failure. I mean, I'm a longtime critic of the drug war. It's not the first thing on my agenda as a governor candidate. And the reality is, if I get elected governor, it doesn't matter a whole lot as long as the federal government has the war on drugs. There's not a whole lot a governor can do about it. If there are places where and points in the past where a state has been more liberal, like California, and the federal government steps in. So you may not accomplish that much. But plain and simple, prohibition didn't work. We all know alcohol prohibition didn't work. We stopped it in 1933. We didn't stop it because alcohol suddenly became good for you. We didn't stop it because we had some lengthy human history of use of alcohol, because that didn't work 13 years earlier to stop prohibition from starting. We stopped prohibition because it was a dramatic failure and it was causing more problems. It didn't really solve any problems, and it caused a lot of problems. And you look at the war on drugs, we're not keeping drugs away from kids. It's gotten worse. More kids have access to drugs now than had before. We're not reducing crime, we're increasing crime. If you talk to anybody who's in the criminal justice system, the crime that comes from drugs is not because they used drugs and committed a crime, it's because they commit crime to get drugs, or it's because of other, they're fighting over who gets to sell drugs in a certain place. Those are the crimes you see with the war on drugs. That's not to say that drugs are perfect. Drugs are a serious problem. We've got to do something to deal with addiction and other problems caused by drugs. The same way we deal with addiction caused by alcohol, and we have DWI laws. There's things that we need to do to deal with that situation. Provide treatment is a useful thing, and we need treatment. But the idea that we're going to just keep locking people up and somehow that's suddenly going to work, I think after, it's been 73 years of marijuana prohibition, it's pretty clear that people are still smoking marijuana, and locking them up isn't stopping that. I did want to mention something. I'm the only governor candidate with a real connection to Johnstown. I used to work in Johnstown from 2000 to 2003. I worked for Judge Best in the county courthouse.
Well, then we wouldn't find you a stranger if you got in the governor's mansion. At least you'd know.
No,
where
and
we are.
little landmarks. I used to have lunch almost every day at Partners Pub, which is right by the courthouse, and I'm probably the only candidate who can find his way around Fulton County without needing without needing an aide to drive for me.
There you go.
I've been there. I came up Stoner's Trail Road just about every day. How you think Rick Lassie or Carl Palladino could find Stoner's Trail Road?